I'll just start. I'm not affiliated to Well. We don't get paid by the Well Standard. We don't get any money from them at all, unfortunately. It is a common misconception, actually. For those who don't know, the London office, the Cundall London office, was the first accredited Well Standard office in Europe, gold standard, I should say. And on the back of that, we have been occasionally thought of as being big supporters of the Well Standard. I think it's important to point out that when we saw the Well Standard, we thought this is different. This is about health and well-being. This isn't about sustainability. This isn't about chasing numbers. This isn't just about chasing low energy figures. It's not about putting a bike rack outside a building and saying you've achieved something. So we thought this is different. Let's have a look at it. But it's quite hard when you get a new standard like this. It's quite difficult when you get something like this to go to a client and say, we think you should do this. You've got to go there with a case study. You've got to go there with more knowledge than that. And so we had the opportunity. We were moving office anyway. We were moving from Farringdon. We had to find another office. So we said to ourselves, why don't we use this opportunity to look at the Well Standard, see if we can implement the Well Standard. What does it mean to us to have to implement the Well Standard? How much of it would we have done anyway? How much would we do as an extra, which we perhaps wouldn't have done previously? Which bits of it worked, which bits of it didn't work, what would we do differently next time, etc. So that's what we did with our London office. And as I said, it achieved a gold accreditation from Well. On the back of that, we learnt a lot. And we have fed that back to the Well Institute to say to them what we thought worked, what we thought didn't. And we've then gone on to use it in our other offices. So the next office that came up for refurbishment, we weren't moving, we were refurbishing, and that was the Manchester office. And so the bulk of what I have here today is based on what we've done at the Manchester office. Now, we haven't actually gone down the route of trying to achieve accreditation from Well. A bit cheeky, we've actually just used the Well Standard and decided how good we are against it and not paid for any accreditation. So probably on the back of that, we probably shouldn't say where we think we sit, because that would be completely rude. But I think that's going to happen, and certainly we know clients who are doing that. They're saying, we like these features, so can you make sure you include this as part of your design, but we're not actually interested in the certificate. So, you know, it is happening. I don't know how Well deal with that. We have also done, on the back of Manchester, we then had Hong Kong and Australia offices, which we've adopted some of the principles of the features, I should call them. And also we've just done Birmingham, which was in the last CIBSE journal, which we are going to achieve the accreditation for, and they're just working through the proof of what we've done there. So there's quite a lot of experience with this, roughly the same group of people in delivering these. But this one is certainly all focused on the Manchester office. And as Cosmin's already talked about today, there is research out there that, as we all know about circadian light and etc. There is this equivalent melanopic lux by Lucas et al. But there's also this circadian stimulus that's much more recent, but that's not part of the Well Standard, the current Well Standard. So the current Well Standard is very much focused around Lucas, and therefore that's what we've looked at as part of designing the lighting within our office spaces. But we actually are quite interested in the circadian stimulus as well. How do the two compare? Is one better than the other? Why would one be better than the other? What are they actually telling us when we review the spaces we've designed and we look at those facts and figures? What are these things telling us? And there are a number of others, as Cosmin's already talked about. MDAI is one of them. And what we are seeing are all these statements in the press about circadian lighting, human-centric lighting, if I'm allowed to mention that without being kicked out. I mean, that's, you know, it's almost something you're not allowed to talk about. But we're seeing all these statements, human-centric lighting increased our productivity by 12%. You know, when you start looking into these studies, and you tend to find they've changed 2 or 3 things at the same time. So was it really the lighting that made the change? Or was it the new furniture? Or was it the fact that somebody moved their desk position to a window, you know? So I think there's a lot out there, but as we've already alluded to, I think there's a lot more we need to do before we can start hanging a hat on anything firm. And perhaps by the time we go through this, we'll know a little bit more, but we'll also maybe have more questions as well. So Cosmin's already taken us through all the different features. The two that stood out for us when we first looked at the Well standard for the London office, the two that stood out were 54 and 62. So this equivalent melanopic lux stood out. There's no other guide out there that's saying you should be thinking in terms of equivalent melanopic lux. There's no one else out there saying that you should be thinking about 200 equivalent melanopic lux measured vertically on the eye. Everything else out there is talking about 400 lux on the desk, or a certain brightness on the wall, or a certain reflection of materials, etc. So it was certainly very, very new. And then of course the other one, I think it's only the school guide that talks about, unless you're talking BREEAM or LEED, it's only actually the school design guide that then talks about climate-based daylight modelling, a form of climate-based daylight modelling. And of course what we had here with feature 62 was to look at spatial daylight autonomy and the sunlight exposure as well. So there were two features here that we thought, well, this is different. This is different to a normal LG7 office lighting guide, for example, or BCO lighting guide. Here's something different, different targets. What does this actually mean to us? Two big disappointments, really. The big disappointments for me was that the two weren't linked. Why was one kept separate from the other? Why was the daylight analysis, why was the daylight design kept separate from equivalent melanopic lux circadian lighting? Those two should be hand in hand. So, you know, even if they'd at least made one of them number 54 and the other number 55, so they were closer together, it might have helped. But those two should be linked. And the other one we never really understood, I don't know, there's no pointer, but the other one we never understood was this idea that only 75% of the desks had to comply. So 25% of your people don't matter. You know, it's are you one of those 25% or are you one of the 75? You know, maybe move jobs if your company's put you in the 25% bucket, you know. So that should change. You know, if that's your permanent desk position. We've been having this discussion around our practice because we took on the London office for 10-year lease. We felt it would last us 5 years before we filled it, and then we might have a headache as to what to do. We filled it after 2.5 years, so we've got a headache far sooner than we thought we were going to have. So thanks to Brexit, we've got too much work. But we've been having this thought about what do we do with people? Do we just keep taking more office space? How do we deal with this? Or do we shift work around the country? And how do we actually cope with this change in working patterns? And if we're going to accept that perhaps we don't give everyone a desk, perhaps 25% of the people don't have a desk, you actually sit where you can. But if we're going to go down that route, we have to then make sure that when they do sit down somewhere, it's in a great place to sit. And so I think these things, plus the reality of where we are with the amount of office space we can afford, I think all of these things are coming together to change how we have to think about sitting people in a space and then lighting those people within a space. And just picking up on what Cosmin's already said, you know, you can do some simple maths there to just work out that if you want to achieve 250 equivalent melanopic lux, using daylight or using a light source with a high blue component is a much more energy efficient way of doing that, because you achieve the 250 lux much more quickly. And that's one of the things that stuck in our mind when we first saw this. We thought, I wonder if that's going to change the industry. I wonder if someone starts chasing some energy figures, if they're actually just going to be putting in 6,500 Kelvin lights into a Cat A office and saying, we've given you equivalent melanopic lux and we've done it for 2 watts a meter squared. So there's lots of things that are great about this. And being a cynic, maybe being a bit too old, I think there's lots of things you can do to maybe abuse this slightly and give yourself perhaps a commercial advantage. So we've got to be the ones to make sure we do things properly and not abuse things. And then, as Cosmin mentioned, there were some changes last year, and just out of the blue, instead of 250 equivalent melanopic lux, it became 200 melanopic lux. And we asked the question, so why? What is out there that's new, that's changed this? And we didn't really get an answer. We said, oh, we've looked at some research, we've looked at this, we've looked at that, and we've changed it to 200. Okay, fine. Bit of a letdown, really, because when someone changes a standard that quickly, you wonder if they'd actually done it right in the first place. And then you have to wonder if they've then done it right the second time. So perhaps they should have waited for more buildings to have been built and gone back maybe a year later, 2 years later, and had a look, what did it mean to design to 250 was that right or wrong? To make a change when perhaps there were only half a dozen buildings globally that were finished was perhaps a little bit too soon for me. Nothing changed with regards to healthy sunlight exposure, and it remained separate from melanopic lighting. So this is the Manchester office, and we're quite happy that we've gone down a black and yellow bee theme. You know, the bee is the symbol of Manchester, the worker bee, and we're quite happy with what we've done there. No shame at all in that. We're blessed with daylight, and that's one of the things that really interested us between the London office and this office. The London office has good access to daylight. We don't have buildings immediately overcrowding our windows. The buildings are quite well set back, but nonetheless we're on the ground floor if you go in at the front, and the first floor by the time you get to the back of the building. So you're at street level effectively. So we're at 10th floor level of a 21-storey building. Typical Manchester day on the left there. You know, I know you're all jealous, you know, we don't like to advertise this too much. We've got no other buildings around us of that scale. Just on this side of the road here is effectively Chinatown, 3-4-storey high red brick buildings, no more than that. There is talk of the car park on the far side being turned into an office. But that might take a few years yet. But nonetheless, we have unrestricted views of the landscape around, and we have unrestricted daylight coming into this building. The building's about 15 metres deep from window to window, so we are blessed with daylight. So you would think to yourself, if something's going to work, if you're going to get the daylight into work in a space, if you're going to be able to do equivalent melanopic lux via daylighting, this is going to be the building where you can make it happen. And that's one of the things that interested us. So the building's roughly orientated northeast, southwest, so the windows are therefore southeast, northwest. So we've taken an opportunity to look at both of those orientations. We only used to have half of this building, and then the tenants on the other side moved out just as we filled our half. So we moved our meeting rooms over effectively to the other side of the lift court, to the top left side, and that enabled us to relay out all of the desks. And it really is very straightforward in that we put the desks as close as possible to the windows, and we put a nice wide corridor with breakout spaces down the middle. So where we don't have the daylight, we've just got breakout spaces and a corridor, and display spaces where we do have the daylight, where we've got the windows, that's where we've got the people. It's no more complex than that, really. So the lighting team all sit here. I bagged myself this position, which is fabulous. So might not have it for long when people find out the results of where they're sat. But it is a great office. It's interesting what Cosmin was saying before. We can do all this number crunching, we can do all this analysis. It just feels a great office. When you sit in there, it just feels a great office. Regardless of how much light is actually arriving at your eye, regardless of how much daylight is actually arriving at your desk, actually you're just looking at daylight. Whichever way you turn your peripheral vision, you're looking at daylight. And so, you know, how do you put that into the standard? You know, how do you actually get that into the standard? So we did look at the daylight side of things, the spatial daylight autonomy, etc. And because of the way we'd laid the desks, and this is actually quite an old model now, because these desks didn't come this far in, we actually shortened each desk, and actually the desks finish almost in line with the columns. And in terms of where the desks were laid out, we do achieve the credit for the daylighting side of Well. But that's just horizontal lighting. That's just looking at how much light you're getting onto your desk. And also, I think the second half of that, in terms of not exceeding 1,000 lux, being very practical, if you've got a blind, as far as I'm concerned, you've passed that standard, because you can control whether you've got 1,000 lux or not. You know, I don't think you need to analyse that personally. You know, if you've got a blind and you want to limit your light to 1,000 lux or less, you can do so. So I think there's certain standards that may be a bit too numerically focused that aren't actually needed to be there. So moving on to the bulk of this now, looking at feature 54 and looking at the equivalent melanopic lux and how we're going to deliver that. The big thing for us was putting the light where it's needed. We've said this for years. Lots of other people have said this for years. We have said for in other presentations where we've just talked about the electric lighting solution for this office, it's put the light where it's needed. So on the back of these columns here, we've actually got uplighters to light the large patch of open ceiling here. And the reason for that is that the people sat here aren't looking at the uplighting here. They're actually looking at the uplighting on the ceiling in front of them. So we actually sat down and thought, where do people actually see? They see the end wall and they see the ceiling there. So that's where we're going to put the light. So there's no actual uplighting from these fittings here because it's not often you sit there and just look straight up above your desk at where you're going. We don't have blinds, slat blinds in there at the moment. That's something we're having installed so we can actually look at the difference between what we have now, which are roller blinds, and having slat blinds in there. And that's a very important part of what we're doing. And the roller blinds we have in there was a requirement by the landlord. Bruntwood insisted that we had to have roller blinds because every floor had roller blinds and everyone had the same roller blinds. So from their office 2 blocks away, when they sit on the 22nd floor of their building, when they look across at this building, we've all got the same looking blinds. They've obviously forgotten that we all like to put them at different heights to annoy them, the building doesn't look the same. The floors don't look the same. Some floors the blinds aren't down, some floors the blinds are down. But anyway, nonetheless, at the time we had to have roller blinds. But the lighting, in terms of putting the light where it's needed, it's, as I said, it's something we've talked about for a long time, but it's also something we learnt from the London office. So the London office lighting scheme was a Cat 8 fit out. The lights were only a year old, and it's not the design we would have done. It's just a checkerboard of lights. It's 300 by 1200 flat panel type light fittings. You've seen loads of them around London. We just don't like office spaces like that, and we certainly don't like office spaces which are fit outs like that. It's just not a good solution. Yes, it gets you 400 lux everywhere in an empty office on the working plane, but that's it. Once you start moving furniture in, once you start putting screens in there and you put people in there, you don't have that 400 lux everywhere. And nor do you need it really. So we had what we had, and we toyed with the idea of taking them out, but of course within the lease, you're going to have to put them back in 10 years' time when you leave the building, and where do you store them for the next 9.5 years, and the cost of that. So they stayed in. It's not ideal. But it did give us an opportunity to look at, well, what happens vertically at each person's desk if we've got this lighting scheme. So this lighting scheme gets us apparently 400 lux everywhere, because that's what we've been told it achieves. But actually, when you start measuring vertically at different people's desks who are only a couple of meters apart from each other, and we're starting to see differences of 127 to 651, it's huge. Now that is actually the worst place in the office. There's nowhere else in the office that has that variation of vertical illuminance. But this is huge. And when you start looking at the picture on the left-hand side, you can see why that there's actually a light fitting that's been left up against the wall, and somebody sits in front of that, and that light is coming straight back at them, and 2 desks away, the light is actually just over the back of their head, and the light's not going to curve around and come into their eye, although it will come down and land at 400 lux on the desk. And so it's a real eye-opener that this panacea of 400 lux everywhere and you can put your desk anywhere, that's fine, but it doesn't work if you're going to start trying to put light into people's eye and you're going to start talking about lighting for health and well-being. So it was a good experiment to the fact that we had that, and we are in the process now of changing the lighting for the marketing team who sit here, because it is the worst place. They're the furthest from any daylighting, and the lighting just isn't working for them, and so we're in the process of changing that now. So hence we went down the route, as I said, of putting the lighting over the actual desk. So you put the light where it's needed. So we've got the lights over the centre of the desks, got a little bit of corridor lighting. We've got some lights that wash onto the back walls. We've got the uplight on the other side of this column for uplighting the soffit. And the results we get from that, if you look here, we've got the desks 1 to 4 down one side. I sit at desk number 1. You've got desks 5 to 6 on this side. You've got the horizontal illuminance, which we've set the lighting levels to be about 350 on the desks, and that's roughly what we're getting on each of those desks. Vertically, we're then getting between 230s, 240s, 250s vertically. Now that's the lux level that we're getting, not equivalent melanopic lux level. So that's the lux level that we're getting from there. So you could say to yourself, well, if we want to hit this figure within the Well standard, this 250 equivalent melanopic lux, if we just choose this particular light source, if we actually go down the route of find a light fitting that's 6,500 Kelvin, we can convert these figures, vertical figures, directly to equivalent melanopic lux, and we've ticked that box. Happy days, that's what we've done. Actually, we didn't want to go down that route. Our strategy when we started designing the building, when we just started to look at the lighting, was we said, surely it should be always daylight that you light a space with, and you supplement it with electric lighting. The electric lighting shouldn't be the prime source of lighting within a space. I mean, we're looking forward to the day we can design a building where the lights are just off for 90% of the time. I mean, I'm not quite sure anyone can afford to design that kind of building and buy the land, but you know.
If you go to the National Gallery, there's like some rooms they have no lights on at all.
It's great.
Just walking here.
It's great. And the quality of light, even though it's at a lower level, and that's something else we've looked at with this. Yeah, it's fabulous. And so we said to ourselves, we want daylight to be the primary source of light. And even if that's daylight isn't achieving the lux level that the guides are telling us we should achieve, actually is a lower level of daylight better than suddenly turning the electric lighting on. And so from the analysis where we looked at how much daylight we've got coming into these spaces and onto all the desk positions, we decided that the electric lighting would only be 3,000 Kelvin lighting. So we've actually only got 3,000 Kelvin electric lighting over the desks, which is quite unusual. And you do have to see it and see it to appreciate it. But what that means, therefore, if we just use these figures as a bit of an example, that means effectively, in terms of chasing this equivalent melanopic lux target for the Well standard, we're actually only delivering, theoretically, 120, 140 equivalent melanopic lux because we've gone down the route of using 3,000 Kelvin lights over the desk. So we're not achieving the equivalent melanopic lux with the electric lighting. But what we felt we were achieving was that we would have warm colour temperature light in the morning, briefly. The daylight would take over, we would have daylight through the bulk of the day, and then we would have warm colour temperature lighting in the evening. And that was the theory, and that's the route we've gone down. So having decided that we're not just going to take the easy option and put the electric lighting in at 6,500 Kelvin, we had to then have a look at, well, are we achieving equivalent melanopic lux using the daylighting? And that's when we started looking at climate-based daylight modelling. And we started looking at putting a vertical measurement at each person's desk. And then we started looking at analysing the results along the lines of, have we got 250 lux for those hours 9 till 1 at each desk position? And these are the results that came out. So I'm all right. I've got 90% of my time if I'm there. I've got great lighting at my desk, assuming we haven't pulled the blind. So this is without any blinds coming down. So this is the maximum amount of light that we can get into the space. But it surprised us really, because we were still getting 64% at the desks furthest from the window, which actually I thought that's pretty good. That's 2/3 of the light that they need is coming from daylighting for those hours 9 till 1.
How many metres from the window is that?
The desks are, I can't remember if we went with 1,500 or 1,600 desks in Manchester. I think there were 1,500 in London and 1,600 wide desks here. So you're looking at 6.4 metres to the edge of the desk here. Yeah. And this is with also, we took the false ceiling out and we screwed all the surfaces to the ceiling. So, and the windows do go up to the soffit as well. So previously we used to have that nasty sort of bulkhead detail and you lost the daylight at the top of the window, whereas now we've gained the daylight coming from the top of the window. So, the height of the space is about 2,950.
So high space and no obstructions.
Well, until the staff moved in, you know, and then you start getting books and light fittings and all sorts of things all over the desk. So this is where we got to, and we thought, well, this is actually, as we expected it to be, this is a very good space. Yes, we've got to deal with some glare control occasionally, But with it being our own office, and particularly with our team here, we are forever turning the blinds up and down because we know the value of putting the blinds up and down. As you go further down the office to the other disciplines, civil, structural, etc., the blinds tend to come down and stay down. So, you know, it's we do occasionally go over to them and say, look, lift your blind, this is killing you, you know. And they do lift the blinds, but we do change the blinds a lot. So we're not far off achieving these figures. So we're only expecting to top these figures up with the electric lighting. But of course, this is lux levels from climate-based daylight modelling. This is not equivalent melanopic lux. So we started taking measurements and looking at what the actual spectrum of light coming through the window was at the different hours of each day. And very crudely, and I appreciate this is incredibly crudely, the average of all of this was 5,704 Kelvin of daylight that was coming into the space. And when you start, again, crudely putting an arrow against these sort of figures here, you can say, well, that's not bad, that's about a ratio of 1. So if we're saying we're getting 250 lux from climate-based daylight modelling, extremely crudely, you could argue you're getting 250 equivalent melanopic lux there. I mean, a downside is we have an incredibly heavy tint on the window. Again, something the landlord insisted on. There isn't an incredibly heavy tint. And they didn't change them all. They managed to miss this one, which you can actually just see as you see the colour shift. Yeah, they changed them all except one. I think maybe to remind us how bad it used to be when it was tobacco coloured, you know. And it's noticeable when you open the window just how heavy that tint is. You don't realise at first, but if you crack open the window and you see the blue sky, which we always get, you will then see the difference between the blue sky and the actual film. And we got to this point where we thought, well, is that good enough? Are we happy with that? And okay, we're quite happy with that. It's not science, you know, but we're quite happy with that. But is there anything else we can do about it? And of course, we've got the toolkits online. You've got the Lucas toolkit. You've got also then the CS toolkit, the circadian stimulus toolkit. And we thought to ourselves, well, can we start to have a look at our actual lighting in our space, our measured lighting in our space in relation to the Lucas toolkit and the circadian stimulus toolkit? And the circadian stimulus one is interesting, I think. I think you're the same mind, Cosmin, that there seems to be much more research gone into the background of the circadian stimulus. They seem to have looked at more things, more aspects of lighting and how it impacts on us to arrive at these figures. So 0.1, if you achieve a CS of 0.1, it effectively means there's no melatonin suppression. The lighting you're receiving is not suppressing melatonin. Once you have 0.3 for an hour, that's effectively saying you've achieved the melatonin suppression you need at the start of the day. And if you hit 0.7, you've effectively saturated your eye. You know, they've not experienced anyone achieving more than 0.7. So we were interested to look at the space we were in now that we were in there, and taking certain days, a clear day, an overcast day, a low angle sun, a January or February, or then taking a June, July, etc., a high angle sun. We were interested in looking at all this data. Foolishly, we said to ourselves, yeah, we'll measure the data on 4 windows, 16 desks, horizontally, vertically. That's what we need to do. And then after a few days and you've got all this data, you think, what am I going to do with that? So yeah, maybe fewer desks might have been the way to go originally, because there's just so much data now, and actually trying to shift through it is the bigger issue. So we've had a look at these two, and basically what you can do with both of these is you put in the spectral power distribution of the light that you're measuring along with the lux level, and it will actually, in the case of Lucas, it actually gives you the 5 different figures, but it will give you the equivalent melanopic lux, and in the case of CS, it will give you the circadian light, or it will give you the CS ratio, 0.3, 0.4, etc. So we started taking measurements at the desks in the office. And so this, again, is my desk here. So on this particular day, 2nd of Feb last year, 9 o'clock in the morning, there was 484 lux vertically, photopic lux vertically, where I was sat. 621 circadian lux, and that was a CS of 0.4 or 0.45. And that was then an equivalent melanopic lux of 500. So this is light that's actually coming in. And this is with all the electric lighting, or almost all of the electric lighting, turned off. Certainly this lighting was turned off the up lighting onto the coffers was turned off. I hadn't turned off the light fitting in the corridor, foolishly, and you'll see that in a minute, because it does have an impact on the results. So this is effectively what we're receiving daylighting wise in that space. So we are getting 500 equivalent melanopic lux, we are getting 0.45 circadian stimulus.
How do you calculate the circadian light or the circadian stimulus? What do you use to measure it?
You put the data, so there's a table of numbers, or in fact it's there, you put the table of numbers, the wavelength and your value into here, and the spreadsheet does it.
And what program is that?
So these are two, I can give you the details afterwards, these are two toolkits you can find online, yeah.
Really?
So we then looked at all of the other desks as well, for that same particular time, so 9 o'clock in the morning, 2nd of February. And we can see the first 4 desks, we had the equivalent melanopic lux, we were above 0.3. But we then start to find that we're on the edge of 0.3 by the time we get to the 3rd desk from the window. Interestingly though, we're just above 250 equivalent melanopic lux, and we're just above 0.3. We're just below 250 and we're just below 0.3. Again, it's not an exact science, it's a particular wavelength that was coming in the window at that time. But it is hinting towards the 0.3 being quite close to 250 at that time. And that was quite interesting. This went back up, which is always one of those why is that moments, and then we realised we'd left the corridor light on, which was a 3-watt LED, and so it's just adding a little bit more light to the end desk. So that's why that happened. So we need to have a look at these again. But it's quite interesting what we were seeing. So we then thought, well, we'll have a look at what's happening midday. We did this every hour on the hour. We got it down to quite a fine art, myself and Liz. It was about a 3-minute round trip to take all these measurements. Not ideal, because you'd rather just take the measurements, but we haven't got that many meters. So hence we were measuring the lighting on the window, doing 4 desks, measuring the window again, measure the window, do 4 desks, measure the window lighting again, just so we could at least go back and look at it and see if the sunlight level had shifted during the time we were taking these measurements. But what you see here is, where I sit, the circadian stimulus has gone up to 0.49, from 0.45 to 0.49, so I'm getting more light. But then again, the sun's higher in the sky, it's later in the day. But it's massively decreased at the desk furthest from the window, so we've gone down from 0.3 to 0.14. So the person furthest away from the desk now isn't getting the light. And essentially, we only have roller blinds, so the light's either coming in or the light is stopped. We're not doing a lot else with the light, we're not reflecting the light. We've got white desks. We know when we chose white desks for that reason, that we wanted to reflect the light around the space. But by the time people have laid out their work on there and they've laid out different things on there, actually you're not getting that same level of reflectance that you thought you were getting from a desk. So it's a bit of an eye-opener at how quickly the light decreased as you came away. But we were also then interested to see, well, is that just a one-off, or is this the beginning of a pattern? And actually what we found, it was the beginning of a pattern. And when you started looking at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, the 4th desk, which is in orange, was always decreasing as the sun was getting higher in the sky. The amount of light at the 4th desk was always increasing. So it's telling you there that you have to do something with the blinds. You have to do something with redirecting that light. If you've got light and you've got access to it, you can't just let it fall on the window. You've got to do something with it in order to get it to these people here. So hence we want to actually get these slat blinds in and have a look at that. So this is looking the other way, and I've gone with the actual photograph rather than the pretty render. This is more real about how the space looks and how the space is used. So this is looking towards the electrical team, so effectively the same position as us, but it's now looking the other way. This is 12 o'clock again, 2nd of February, so I was up at 0.49, our lowest person was 0.14 circadian stimulus. What we've got here now, Joe, who sits here, is up at 0.41, and we're down at 0.18. So there's actually more light at this side, even though the sunlight's on the other side of the office. There's actually a little bit more light on this side. And I think it just indicates how quickly this can vary. I think it just indicates how the desk being different, because our desk did not look like that when we took the measurements, you know, that's just the render. So it just shows how quickly the lighting can change and how quickly you can move from 0.1, 0.14 to 0.18, etc. But it's certainly very interesting. But then we thought, okay, well, we're learning a lot. We've got a lot more data to go through. We're learning a lot about the daylight that's coming in, what's actually arriving at our eye. We're learning a lot about that. It's quite pleasing to see that we're above this 0.3 circadian stimulus. We're above this 0.3 figure, so that's all positive. So we'll just take some electric light meter readings now and show that we're getting this calm environment in the evening, that this 3000 Kelvin is actually doing the job it's meant to do, because we all feel good. 4 o'clock in the winter, the space feels great. It's relaxed, it's soft, it's gentle, it's warm. And people do go home at 5 and 5:30, and they are more relaxed than they would be if they were sitting under 4,000 or 6,500 Kelvin LEDs. So we thought we'll take some measurements. And then lo and behold, we're at 0.32 circadian stimulus. So we're sort of scratching our heads thinking, right, okay. So we measure it again, and you measure it again, and you keep measuring it, thinking, well, surely something's gone wrong. So you tap something, and and it doesn't. We're at 0.32 and circadian stimulus. So when you look at the fact that they're taking into account not just 480 nanometers, which equivalent melanopic lux is taking into account, they're looking at the wider spectrum. We're still up at 0.32. So there's us thinking we've got this lovely, warm, relaxed environment, and we're no longer suppressing our melatonin, and we're sending our staff home relaxed, and we're not. But interestingly, the equivalent melanopic lux, the Lucas method, is down at 160, which is roughly 140 where we thought we were going to be. So Lucas is saying, this is relaxing. Circadian stimulus is saying, go for it. You can do another 8 hours, guys, So there's something needs looking into there. It's not just the wavelength, it's not just the color temperature. There's more to it than that. So that's been interesting to learn about as well. So coming on to the conclusions then. For me, it'd be great if we could find a way through climate-based daylight modelling or similar kind of methodology where we're looking at annual data that we can then show clients, this is where to sit your staff within a space. This is where your staff will receive the best level of light, the most appropriate level of light for circadian stimulus. This is where you need to be sitting, people. But what's missing from that, unless you take this leap of faith that the lux level you get from climate-based daylight modelling is 6,500 Kelvin, unless you take that massive leap, actually we haven't got that methodology at the moment. John, I'm hoping you're going to stand up at this point and say, I'm working on just the thing you need, but clearly not. Is there a way you can link the spectral data to the climate-based modelling data?
Actually, we did do that in the study that was published in 2012, the one that we did with Velux. Actually, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, we did track the spectrum through that. It was a rough attempt, but in principle, it's possible.
Yeah, and I think if we're genuinely going to light spaces with daylight to achieve this equivalent melanopic lux or whatever the criteria they decide they're going to use, we somehow need to get to that point, and we're not there yet. And likewise, these tools are great, but it's a point calculation every time, and you're taking your data and you're converting it, and then you're having to pull it all together into, you write your little script, you pull it all together, and you try and find the patterns, you try and find, it's so much work, it's actually impractical, that nobody could afford to pay you to do that commercially, because it would just take so long for you to do that. And I'm not quite sure how much you'd learn. Taking certain times of the day, take a clear sky, take an overcast sky, take that for each month of the year and give yourself, okay, here's a typical pattern of light. Maybe that's doable, but certainly not annual based at the moment. But I think we need to somehow get to that point. If for no other reason, we've got to somehow encourage well, and certainly the people who are going to use well and read well, that when they read that feature 54, they should be thinking daylight. Whereas at the moment you read feature 54 and you think electric light, oh, and by the way, I can top it up with some daylight. We've got to reverse that somehow. I didn't put this in to suggest that you get all your staff and stand them at a window, although, maybe that's where we have to get to. I think something that worries me is and we've spoken about it already, you mentioned it as well, Cosmin, this idea of you're looking at circadian light and with human-centric lights, with, spectrum-shifted lights. I think there's a real big push by the industry to go down that route because they sell light fittings, it makes money. I think the worry I have is that if someone comes along and says, we can achieve the Well standard with this product positioned at 3 metres by 3 metres and the product's £200 a time, you're not going to see windows in buildings in the future, because why? Someone has said, we have given you a Well standard building without any daylight. And I'm really concerned that we're going to get to a point, and particularly built up areas like London, it's so hard as this building gets bigger, the next one has to get bigger to get some more daylight, and so the fight for daylighting goes on. And we know it's so important. It's not just the equivalent melanopic lux, the view out, the colour of the light on your hand. And actually that's quite an interesting one. I've said it before that Joe, who sits here, we started messing about with his electric light, and we started dimming it down, and we started messing about without telling him. And we actually turned it off and just said to him, really sorry, Joe, they've gone off today. We're trying to sort it out. If you need a lamp, we've got some samples. I'll get you a lamp, And we kept going back, taking measurements. It wasn't until it was down at 50 lux, he actually said, look, Andrew, I can't see what I'm doing. This is annoying me. But he was happy down to 50 lux. Now, we can't base an entire lighting guide on Joe, LG 15 Joe, lighting for Joe. But there was some truth in that. Having a lower level of natural light was actually more acceptable. If once he'd lost 200 lux of electric light, he wasn't happy, but he was happy to go down to 50 lux of natural light. Sorry, Stephen.
Dark adaptation, natural environment.
But
I think that the benchmark is not just daylight, but is our total experience of daylight during the day.
Yes.
And I think this is where we're trying to take it a terrible tunnel vision on all these things.
Yeah, I agree.
I was going to ask whether we should always put older people near the windows where they need more light.
I think so. Yes, absolutely. I think we should. I think there's a genuine case for that. I think we should, and certainly should rotate people, and maybe they get longer by the window, But certainly there is definitely a case for doing that, David.
One of these, I can't remember whether it's the Lucas et al. Or the Rhea model, is based on a 32-year-old.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And if you compare a 75-year-old, a 75-year-old needs 3.9 times as much light as a 32-year-old for equivalent circadian performance.
That's it, and we know that. We do know that. So I think there is very much a case. CAD operators should always be in the middle because they always close the blind anyway. So they're another group of people who we can.
Other sedentary people, like older people, who are sitting behind sheets of glass for 99% of their day. Some of this actually filters through in terms of what is their well-being and health status. Simply just putting behind a sheet of glass is dilatory to their health.
Yes.
So that giving them enough light to stimulate their circadian system is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
We should be really thinking about this in a much more global term.
I agree.
And I think the Well standard is a pain because it only says office on the front.
Yeah.
And my students at the moment are now transferring this into different areas. Like you might write, say, by the way, it says offices on the front of this.
Yes, yeah. Well, we did the same with climate-based daylight modelling. It went into the school design guide, but we just used it for offices anyway, and it gives you a different style of building when you use it that way. So, the office guide hasn't caught up yet, but it will do eventually, and so great, happy days when it does.
Do you, with that much glazing, obviously you are very lucky because I've been to your office and they are fantastic, but you have loads of glazing. Is that affecting the temperature of the building in the summer? Does it get too hot?
It did do, and that's why they came and put the film on. So that was dictated to us.
Characteristics of the film?
We have no idea. They will not tell us what they've put on. All the best I've got was I stood on my desk and held the meter out of the window, and then put the meter behind. And yeah, that's right. It does. Yeah.
You don't have air conditioning.
We do have air conditioning boxes in there now. Yeah, there are some air conditioning boxes there. We never. Yeah. Although this is Cundall, we don't like air conditioning, so we go in shorts and t-shirt, and at the point someone's coming in their trunks, we'll turn the air conditioning on because that's just unacceptable.
Several of the photographs, the computer screens were not necessarily at 45 degrees as recommended. They're all over the place.
Yes, they are indeed.
Is that just personal preference?
It is personal preference. So we have a guy, Hugh, in our Newcastle office who comes around and he just educates people on, you know, the desk position, educates people on how to sit, you know, get the height right, get the height of the screen right, and as soon as he's gone, you know.
Yeah, presumably, because you've got the film, people can have the, you know, they don't have to have the 20 degrees maybe.
No, that's quite right. I've had sunlight coming straight in there. It's quite a heavy film. I've had sunlight coming straight in, and I'll just squint slightly, and I'm all right. You know, I say I'm all right. You know, I'm squinting slightly, but you know, I don't pull the blind down straight away. It's really got to be coming in quite strong. I mean, it's more so as it travels around to midday and starts coming at me this way. That's when I need to pull the blind down. Yeah.
So can we put you on the spot a little bit? If it wasn't your office, it was for a client, and you didn't have to use the film, how would you approach this?
Me personally, I'm a massive fan of horizontal slat blinds, because you can bounce the light up, and this is what we're going to have installed onto these two windows here. It should have been done by now, it hasn't, unfortunately. We're having them installed here because we'll get the same amount of light through these two windows as we'll get through the next bay, and we'll be able to do then a comparison with the guys using the roller blinds and the guys using the slat blinds here. And we've deliberately kept all the air conditioning above this acoustic raft, and it's in front of the pillar here. So actually the bulk of where the lighting's coming in is going up onto a very clean soffit. There's nothing there to obstruct it, so reflecting any light onto there is going to reflect the light onto a clean soffit, which will push it to the back of the room. It was all thought about at the time, but yeah, I'm a big fan of slat blinds. But you have to do this on yourself, because you know the client would sue you if you were messing about the way we're messing about with our guys here, you know. So forever changing things and tweaking things, you know.
So with client-based modelling on schools, if you have a 2.7 floor-to-ceiling height, you know, as this lady was saying, you have to start having roof lights because you can't get the light into the back of the classroom. But you know, I'm sort of saying to architects now, you know, we'll consider going on a 2-story school, consider going higher, you know, 2.8, 3 meters, and get the window right up.
Yeah.
And not have the wet glass at the bottom.
I did have some school slides in here, actually. I took them out foolishly because the first schools batch that we worked on that's just been completed up in Manchester using the new FAA guide, we had an opportunity to go back and see the head teacher, and all the teachers were in their classrooms. And I didn't go in there and say, I did the daylight, and is the daylighting wonderful? We didn't do any of that. We just went in and said, right, what would you say about the space? There was 2 of us who went back. And all bar one of the teachers was using the blinds properly, the slat blinds properly, and they all said acoustics and daylighting was so much better in the spaces than they'd ever had anywhere else. And to be fair, it was the music teacher who wasn't using the blinds. She'd basically pulled them down and left them down, and they were just there. And so I said, okay, look, I did the daylighting design for this, and can I just talk you through why we need to do this? And she turned around quite fair, and she said, it was a 3-width window with 1 Venetian blind, if you like. She said, it's just too heavy. She said, it's just too heavy. And I went and I thought, yeah, you know what, actually, you know, for a very experienced, mature music teacher, yes, this blind is too heavy. So they are going back and putting in 3 blinds instead of the 1. So lesson learnt there. But importantly, that was the only room where they weren't using the blinds properly. And the photographs I had show the massive difference in how the light is being bounced into the room. Yeah. We had 3,250. We were blessed with height, yeah. Yeah, I think again a lesson learnt there is they had rotated the acoustic rafts at the last minute, so the acoustic rafts were running parallel to the window. And actually from the photograph we took by the door, as you look in, you can see some of the light being reflected above the raft. Of course, it's not going to get back down past the raft. So if they'd been left the way we'd said, similar to our office, we've put them here such that we can get the light to come in and bounce up, you know. So again, a lesson learnt there. So I did have those. I can find them and send them on, you know. So. I shall move on to some more things. So yeah, very worried about human-centric lighting, sort of doing away with windows, particularly in London. I think we're going to have to watch out for that one. But then this is the other one, and we've just touched on it now. So historically, we've had this 4,000 Kelvin lighting in offices at 500 lux or 300 lux, depending which guide you're going on. And that's typically what's always been the case. And we've got this current human-centric lighting thing going on where people are actually just shifting the colour temperature, where they're actually looking at 2.7, 6.5, and they shift it during the day. But what we've already seen with our office, we had the 3,000 Kelvin light, and it is very warm, but we're actually still got a circadian stimulus of 0.32 during that time. So are we needing to get to this point where actually in the evening the lighting, as well as the colour temperature dropping, the lighting level drops as well. So for the last hour of the day in the winter, we maybe only have 150 lux of light. So we are bringing that circadian stimulus down. That's up for debate. I mean, we're going to try it. Luckily, we can try it on our own guys and ask them, you know, not to sue us. But we'll try it, and we'll see what impact it has. You know, we've done this a number of times with our staff before. We ask them questions. We don't tell them we're just doing the lighting. We try and tell them we're doing 3 or 4 different things, so that they're not focusing on the lighting. But this is something that perhaps we need to look into. And then finally, it's kind of like, does it actually matter? Does any of this really matter? And I argue both ways with myself. I argue yes it does, and I argue no it doesn't. I see that, you know, you spend, you know, either side of lunch, you're in the office and you're not in control of the lighting that someone has given you. You know, we're quite lucky, we've got some degree of control over the lighting in our office, but most people have no control. Most people don't know that they should have control. Most people don't know whether what they're sat under is good or bad lighting. So you have got 7, 8, 9 hours there where people are in a space they're not in control of, that might not be right for them. So yes, all of this does matter. But then if you're talking about achieving a circadian stimulus of 0.3 for an hour in order to suppress your melatonin, then, you know, if you just sort out where you have your breakfast and make sure you have your breakfast by a window, and if you actually walk to work instead of getting the tube, have you actually achieved that? And I was in Adelaide for a project a while ago, and I just thought I'd just sort of a day in the life of, so I took my little meter with me and started measuring how much light I was receiving. So getting up in the morning, I just sat there for half an hour, just doing a few emails in front of the window, measuring the lighting level I had. And then I took my walk to the office, so I went down the street and I measured again the lighting level, the colour temperature, etc., and the spectral distribution. And actually by this point, after an hour in the morning, before I even got to the office, I'd achieved my CS of 0.3 for an hour. So I've done that job. So apparently I've done everything I need to do. I've not even got to the office yet. Now the way we've done our office is to just give everyone a table lamp, because it's such a small, cosy little office. We've got no ceiling lights. People just have a table lamp, and then we've got some daylight coming from one side. Although there's actually some massive trees out here as well, which actually shade the light coming in. So we've lit the wall with a table lamp, but you do get some more light from that when you need it, and you can turn it off when you don't need it. And of course you go out by lunchtime. By lunchtime, you know, you've saturated, you've hit all these figures you're meant to hit. So I'm arguing with myself, does it matter what we do in an office? Yes. Does it matter what we do in an office? Perhaps no, you know. So anyway, thank you.